McLaren reveals big upgrades coming after the break. Williams reveal difficulties they had signing Carlos, and Ferrari is in a tough position as they seek answers to improve their form. Do consider subscribing to the channel. Now let's get straight into the latest F1 news. Ferrari team principal Fred Vasseur has insisted that he has no concerns over Lewis Hamilton's deficit to Mercedes teammate George Russell in qualifying in F1 2024. Hamilton is in his final season as a Mercedes driver, having announced in February that he will join Ferrari on a multi-year contract from the F1 2025 campaign. His departure at the end of this year will bring an end to the most successful team-driver partnership in F1 history, with Hamilton winning 6 of his joint record 7 world championships, as well as becoming the first man to surpass 100 race wins and pole positions since joining Mercedes in 2013. Hamilton collected his second victory of the F1 2024 season at the recent Belgian Grand Prix, where he inherited a record-extending 105th career triumph after Russell was disqualified for having an underweight car. Despite leading his teammate by 34 points, Hamilton, who will turn 40 next January, has lagged behind Russell in qualifying conditions this season, with Russell starting ahead in 10 of the first 14 races. Vasseur has played down the suggestion that Hamilton's qualifying form is a cause for concern ahead of his arrival at Ferrari in F1 2025, claiming his points lead over Russell proves that he is the more efficient of the Mercedes drivers. He told Sky Italy, "Everyone has been saying since the beginning of the season that Russell is faster than Hamilton, but at the moment, he is the one who has scored more points for Mercedes. In terms of efficiency, I think he's a good benchmark. We know the positive aspects of Lewis's arrival at Ferrari, for example, his great experience in Formula One. Hamilton will become Charles Leclerc's new teammate in F1 2025, replacing Carlos Sainz, who last week signed a 2-year contract to join backmarkers Williams. Despite winning his home race from pole position in Monaco and starting from pole in Spa after Max Verstappen was hit with a 10-place grid penalty, Leclerc has endured another inconsistent season in F1 2024. Vasseur has acknowledged that Ferrari are not blameless for Leclerc's mid-season slump, admitting that the team have collectively overdone it at times. He added, "Charles has had some problems over the last few weekends, but I still think he's lucid, and the truth is that sometimes we've collectively overdone it. Ferrari has struggled with bouncing after recent upgrades, with the increased downforce of recent upgrades thought to have reawakened the porpoising effect commonplace with the current ground effect cars." Carlos Sainz's team had been speaking with Williams for nearly a year, even before he learnt of his Ferrari exit, it has been claimed. Sainz put an end to speculation about his Formula One future last week when he confirmed he had signed a multi-year contract with Williams for 2025 and beyond. Last year, Sainz told the guests at a pre-Christmas sponsor event on behalf of Estrella Galicia in Madrid that he wanted to continue with Ferrari, and with a multi-year contract. "I want to renew, and I would like to do it for more than a year," said the Spaniard. "I feel perfectly valued by Fred and the entire Ferrari family, and as a driver, that is your main priority." However, a month later when Ferrari confirmed his teammate Charles Leclerc had signed a fresh extension, there was no mention of Sainz. Then came the shock announcement that Lewis Hamilton would take Sainz's seat for the F1 2025 World Championship, the Briton having made the call to leave Mercedes after 12 years with the Brackley squad. 6 months later, and after a barrage of speculation, Sainz confirmed his 2025 team when the Spaniard announced he'd be joining Williams on a multi-year deal. Interestingly, his team was already speaking with Williams team boss James Vowles last year, even before Sainz's "I want to renew" statement at the Madrid event. His team even visited Williams' Grove factory. The Sainz family have been in talks with Williams for nearly a year now. They were at the factory in Grove before last Christmas and have been in constant contact with Vowles, claims F1.com's Lawrence Barreto. Sources say contact between Sainz and Vowles has been consistent, to the point where they were messaging daily. Sainz believes in his vision and that Williams offers him the best chance to at best shape his future, and at worst give him a package that, at certain races, will allow him to deliver strong results to keep him in the shop window. Vowles has made no secret of his desire to sign Sainz and has done everything in his power to persuade the Spaniard to sign on the dotted line. At one point in recent weeks, it looked like that chase would be in vain, but Vowles has impressively pulled it back and got his man. As is the norm when a driver doesn't have a firm contract, Sainz also spoke with other teams on the grid, most notably Audi and Alpine. He, however, chose to pin his colors and his future to the Williams project. In Williams, Sainz gets stability and a project that is going places, even if it's in its infancy, Barretto added. Vowles has been putting the building blocks in play for 18 months or so, and there are clear signs behind the scenes that things are going in the right direction. The team have gone on a huge recruitment drive, including significantly bolstering the technical team under the leadership of Pat Fry, who joined from Alpine, with the recruitment of Alpine's former technical director, Matt Harmon. They've had a long and fruitful relationship with engine supplier Mercedes, and will know how to get the very best out of the powertrain, which is expected to be the class leader in 2026 when new rules come into play. Owners Doralton have pumped money in since the day they took over the team and are committed to keep the resource flowing to take the team back to the glory days when they dominated the sport. Changes are clear, even if they aren't yet translating into performance on track. Williams have scored just 4 points this season with the team sitting down in P9 in the Constructors' Championship. McLaren Formula One boss Andrea Stella has promised that some significant upgrades for the MCL 38 will arrive after the summer break. The Italian also insists that he's been surprised by the car's consistently competitive form in recent weeks, given a relatively modest flow of new parts to the car relative to rivals. Stella says that the team's last major step was at the Miami GP back in May, although the team did, for example, have a revised front wing aimed at slow corner performance in Austria. Effectively, Red Bull have taken trackside more development so far in terms of physical parts delivered, when you look at the FIA submissions, than what we have done, he said. I can talk for McLaren. We seem to be now in condition to cash in some of this development that we have accrued, and I would expect that for the second part of the season we will have, at multiple times, some new parts. In a way, I'm surprised that we've been so competitive, considering that from Miami onwards, we haven't brought trackside many new parts. So it means that obviously the Miami upgrade was big, but there's some upgrades that will come in the second part of the season. Stella admits that McLaren still isn't where it wants to be in terms of its low-drag configuration for high-speed venues, indicating that helps to explain why the team had a difficult weekend at Spa. Improving the car for that kind of venue remains a key goal for the team. I think we have gone 50% of the journey, he said. I'm more confident that at high downforce we have the car in a good place, and the car does what we want in terms especially of aerodynamic behavior. But we haven't yet done a lot of development at lower drag levels. So to me, it's not a surprise that in Belgium, we were not as competitive as Hungary, and it's not a surprise that for the same or a little bit better top speed, still we were losing quite a bit in the second sector. It means that if we want to gain speed, we'll give up quite a lot of grip. But I hope that in the future, possibly next year in Belgium, we have completed this quest to have the most efficient car, even when top speed is important. McLaren was third in the Constructors' Championship when the ATR table was reset at the end of June, so until December 31st, the team has more wind tunnel time and CFD usage than both Red Bull and Ferrari. Red Bull Formula One boss Christian Horner says that the team is still working flat out to improve the RB20 and knows what areas it has to focus on in order to find performance. Red Bull still leads both world championships, but McLaren has cut its advantage, and the Milton Keynes outfit has been beaten to victory in the last 4 races. However, Horner pointed out that Max Verstappen was still comfortably fastest in qualifying at Spa and could have won the race without his PU grid penalty. The whole team is still working flat out on this car, said Horner, because with stable regs, whatever we learn now is relevant to next year anyway. And if you reflect on the first part of the year now, we're over half distance. We've won 7 Grand Prix. We've won 2 or 3 sprint races. We're leading both championships. But over recent weeks, that Constructor's lead has diminished somewhat, and that's where our focus is. I think we know what we need to, where we need to focus and improve, and that's what everybody's doing. We took the pole at Spa by 0.6. It was a very dominant display, and I think had Max started from the pole, it's then a completely different race. But we took the penalty. We got damage limitation out of it. I think with Checo we need to work with him and continue to support him to understand what isn't quite working at the moment. Horner says that it was inevitable that the top teams would close up after a period with stable regulations and with gains from development getting ever more marginal. Inevitably, you get to the top of the curve, he said, and we have less wind tunnel time than anybody because of the system of the ATR. And that's normal. You will continue to get convergence throughout next year as well. I think everybody's getting to the top of the curve. And 1 week it's Mercedes, 1 week it's McLaren, 1 week it's Red Bull. Ferrari have popped up for a while, so it keeps moving around. Horner suggested that the competitive situation will continue to the end of the current regulations before the big changes for 2026. I think it's great for the sport, and it was almost inevitable, he said. When you get consistency of regulations, you always get convergence. If you look through the history of F1, I remember when I first came into F1, Ron Dennis banging that drum back in 2005. He had the best car at that time. But convergence has always brought the teams together. And of course, we've got a big regulation changes in 2026 that will cause divergence. But between now and then, for the next 18 months, it's going to be flat out between the 4 teams. The time between SP and Zandvoort will not be able to be fully exploited by the teams to work on their cars, closing the factories, the Formula One department, for a period of 2 weeks. The teams therefore only have the week after Belgium, i.e. the current one, and the week of preparation for Holland to be able to continue their work. For this reason, it is often complicated to see real reversals, because at work it is like a normal consequence of 2 Grand Prix with a week off in between. For this reason, those who, like Ferrari, need to make up for lost ground will still have to push in the few days available to be as ready as possible when they return from vacation, to do everything to return to the level of competitiveness, at least at the beginning of the season, also hoping for further improvement. After the SPA race, Frederick Vasseur explained how this is a snapshot of the current championship. Here I would have bet on a victory for Max, even with the penalty. On Friday night, I would have said McLaren, they were very strong. In the end, we took pole position and Mercedes won the race. It's difficult to make predictions because the 4 teams are very close to each other, said the French team principal. In fact, in Belgium, there was a reversal of performance from free practice to the race. Qualifying was affected by rain, and Charles Leclerc and Ferrari implemented a brilliant strategy, which the Monegasque made the most of with a very good lap that put him in first position for the race. On Sunday, however, the SF24 confirmed itself as the 4th force, very close to the best in the first 2 stints, but more suffering in the final, where the speeds in the fast corners increased and the red car paid for the lack of downforce and the return of bouncing, even if in the words of Vasseur himself. This phenomenon had little influence on the SPA. The hopping was more or less under control. In Belgium, Mercedes had presented itself with a significant update package, as the floor had been revised in key areas to increase the performance of the W15, after having spent most of this championship correcting its defects. In Brackley, however, they had no problem removing the new parts from the W15, also due to a wet Saturday that would have prevented further work on understanding and analysis. For them, returning to a known base that then on Sunday went even beyond expectations, as the Mercedes men themselves expected a lower final placement. Mercedes is an example of how little it takes to turn a situation around. On Friday they struggled, and on Sunday they won. When we talk about a team that is struggling, we are talking about a few tenths, and you are in P7, P8, but it doesn't take much and you can be P1, said Vasseur. Frederick Vasseur offered his vision on the problems that have been holding Ferrari back lately and that have also become apparent on Mercedes with the new SPA floor, after having solved them brilliantly last year and especially in the winter, as far as Ferrari is concerned, and during the season for Mercedes. Bouncing. The famous hopping that occurs at a high speed and causes sudden pressure drops, resulting deleterious. Ferrari's example is that with the Spanish floor they gained 10 points of load and efficiency, especially in the slow, but in the fast this detachment of the bottom from the track led to violent losses of 20 load points, a huge amount. Bouncing cannot be simulated or analyzed in the wind tunnel. We have a metric that tells us when it can come, but we are all at the limit because we are driven by finding more performance and we play on a subtle balance, explained the team principal and current DT in Pector Ferrari. The teams with the new regulations have been surprised by bouncing, with the exception of Red Bull, and over the years they have improved, especially by updating and improving the simulation systems and the aforementioned metrics to improve bouncing or porpoising. In the wind tunnel you can control the downforce gained, but it's also a matter of the rider's confidence, explained Vasseur. According to the French driver, In fact, an update that will introduce a tenth of an extra advantage, but will lead to the car being more unpredictable or difficult to drive, perhaps due to bouncing, causing the driver to lose confidence, could also cause you to lose more than the update itself earns you. The problem that all the teams are facing is that this generation of single-seaters seems to have reached almost the peak of development. Aston Martin got lost in looking for more downforce and efficiency, Ferrari returned to suffer from bouncing, and the same seems to happen to Mercedes. Red Bull is not finding the expected gains, while McLaren is a car that is now dominant at times, but which has remained at the Miami update and the front wing in Austria, without going any further, working in Woking for new future developments. This also explains why there is a certain convergence of factors, and it is not like in the past where you easily find performance in the tunnel. We also see how when someone does P4, P7, it is not 60 seconds behind Max as in previous years. Ferrari and Hungary did as in 2023, but the gap was reduced from 65 to 20 seconds. Everyone is pushing and improving, said Vasseur. During this same championship, we saw an RB20 start as a dominant force and suggest another year of doubles and victories by Verstappen. But this was not the case, with a change of passage arrived approximately after China towards Miami. Soon all the teams have improved. We can also see the gap that Ferrari has reduced to Red Bull and the fact that we have scored 60% more points than in 2023. On the general analysis of the championship, Frederick Vasseur stressed that the important thing is not to lose points in negative moments, which unfortunately his team did not succeed in. We failed in England, Spain, and Canada. We overreacted to some problems and lost too many points. But at SPA we scored more points than Red Bull and limited the damage compared to McLaren. Now in Maranello they are called upon to react and increase the pace of the SF24 if they want to try to aim for the Constructors' World Championship again or take back second place, or at least defend the current third position from Mercedes. Closing the doors on Renault's F1 engine project doesn't hit Bruno Famin hard because he's an engine guy, but because he had to tell people who have been fully dedicated for years that their passion won't last much longer. As a team that's made headlines in the last 2 years over big-name changes at the top, Alpine threw a curveball last month. They not only announced Famin would be stepping down as the Alpine team boss, but that there are massive changes underway at Viry. The biggest of that is the scrapping of their Formula One engine project. Although Renault signed up for the 2026 regulations with Formula One's new engine formula, they've now opted to abandon their engine project and become a customer instead, with Mercedes reportedly the preferred option. For the 250-plus staff in Viry, who have been hard at work designing the 2026 engine, it's been seen as a betrayal. Union rep Karine Dubruck told L'Equipe, "We didn't see it coming. It's a stab in the back, a betrayal. We developed engines here that were capable of becoming F1 champions 12 times over, and now we can't. They didn't even wait for the first run on the test bench." Famin says it was very difficult having to tell those 250 people about Renault's decision. It has nothing to do with being an engine guy or not, the departing Alpine team boss told the Beyond the Grid podcast. It has to do with human beings. People who are working hard on a project, engine, gearbox, or anything else, fully dedicated for years to their passion, lucky enough to walk in their passion, but to who we are saying that it won't last anymore. And, of course, it is very difficult, especially while the 2026 project was delivering quite well. A lot of investment from the people, and the first result we had was good. We had chosen to take some very, let's say, aggressive technical option, and the first result was saying that it was right to do that. But while Renault faced the prospect of losing some of their brightest engine people to the engine manufacturers who will make up the 2026 grid, taking with them not only IP knowledge but also their skills, Famin is hoping they can be persuaded to stay on in Viry to work in other projects. That could be the huge challenge, he admitted. The IP, of course, is one thing, but the real asset is the people. The people, their skills. The real asset is the people, the staff. Of course they have been promised a job, but for people living their passion of working for their passion, it's not enough. But, he added, in Viry we are not doing only Formula One, we are also doing all motorsport programs. The Alpine program, all the development of the software, the systems, the whole project is being monitored from Viry. We are doing Formula E as well, where we developed all the FIA manufacturer for the Formula E, which is being used by your Nissan and McLaren in Formula E. There are a lot of activities, even if Formula One is the most part of the activities, of course. And now we will have to create new activities more on the very high-level engineering side to get the best use of the skills of the people if they are happy to stay. Thanks for watching the video, everyone. I'll see you in the next one.